guys. Hello. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Winter Wonderland on this beautiful Sunday. There will be much on this beautiful Sunday. There will be much less crunching than yesterday, I imagine. A lot more soft walking in the snow. Here's a little friend. That's a house sparrow. Hello, house sparrow. How are you? Oh, there's even a great horned owl. Listen. There's even a great horned owl. It's just going hoo 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 hoo. There's even a great horned owl. It's just going hoo 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 hoo. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Consciousness Explained, Episode 7. My name is William. It's a pleasure to have you. Welcome to Consciousness Explained, Episode 7. My name is William. It's a pleasure to have you all with me, William. It's a pleasure to have you all with me. It's also a pleasure to have you all with me. It's also we just got another one. We just got another one. But it's out there. Glide. But it's out there. Glide. But it's out there. Glide. Welcome to Consciousness Explained. Ooh, that was a good one. Thanks for your love, everyone. It actually puts this out there to more people. We're going to try to get that great horned owl sound to come in again. Rare do I hear it during the day. Usually around sunset. Oh, it has its significant other also hooting with it. Let's see if you can hear both. Their hearing is excellent. It seems to only be hooting when I walk. So let's do that. Let's do that. Pretzel asks if I'm going to watch the Super Bowl today. If it's available on the internet, perhaps. It seems like the last few years, the only way you can watch it is with cable television. It seems to be the only thing that allows cable to survive. However, I do enjoy the Super Bowl as, an American pastime, a ritual as it were, though it seems to have been tainted through the news over the last few years, that it's more of a ritual in itself. Sports, we could talk about that today. We could talk about how sports are a ritual, so are concerts, any sort of gathering. It's a gathering of energy, so there's a lot of energy out there today. For those who are watching the Super Bowl, or about to watch the Super Bowl, who are you rooting for? That's the idea. It's either one side or the other, right? Sports. It's one side or the other. Pretzel says, I actually had a family member that played in the NFL and almost made it to the Super Bowl. Now that is pretty cool. That is very cool. Pretzel, we start talking about the Super Bowl and suddenly viewers flood in. I should probably keep saying it. Super Bowl, Super Bowl, Super Bowl. I did just see the commercial with Seal. It was a Mountain Dew commercial. And, most of us watch Super Bowl for the commercials. And they're always entertaining in a certain way. Life is supposed to be entertaining. Sam says, hey, love. Glad to see you. Nice to see you too, Sam. Welcome. Welcome to the snow. You got the great horned owls hooting on Super Bowl Sunday. Speaking of symbolism. Great horned owl. Hooting on Super Bowl Sunday. There it is. Oh my gosh, I see it. I see them. I see them. I'm going to see if I can use Zoom. They're right there. Oh my God. They're huge. It's either that or those are red-tailed hawks. Hold on. Let's see if I can show you. Their wingspan. Oh, it's either that or they're red-tailed hawks. Sam says, snowed here too. Super Bowl, Super Bowl, Super Bowl. It's the Super Bowl test. So right now, whatever's going on, these great horned owls are gliding between the snow-covered limbs of these trees, these deciduous trees. And they are no longer hooting, but they were. They are on the hunt, indeed, Sam. They are on the hunt. All right. Let's let them do that thing, and we will do our thing. Let's let them do that thing, and we will do our thing. So let's talk consciousness. This is episode 7. Snow-covered winter wonderland. Great horned owls hooting. Red-tailed hawks soaring above. Lots of hunting on this day. For all of the beautiful snowbirds look clear as day as targets, so I pray for them, because they are little loves. But it is the circle of life, as it were. And they are birds of prey. These are raptors who need to eat. And this is probably a day for good eating. It just is what it is. Hey, the light owl. Thanks for following. Nice photo. Ooh. Sam says it snowed 3 inches. I think we got about that too, Sam. Yeah, maybe 3.5. Got about that much too. Black-capped chickadees out. It's not nearly as crunchy, the ice, as yesterday. Perhaps it was a sign to just wait. Just be until the next day. I love this tree over here. I'll show you. If you look carefully, you see how it's bent. It's bent all the way down to the ground, but it's still alive. And it's got its own little versions of trees growing on the bend. Life finds a way, as they say in Jurassic Park. Michael Crichton. That was Jeff Goldblum's line. Life finds a way. Sam says, snow sound. Love it. Light Owl says Snow Step is the best ASMR. It's incoming. T. Jordan, thanks for following. All right. And hello. Got a question coming in from Rob. Rob asks, it says I can't pin the comment, but that's okay. It says pin a notice for viewers to contact you. I don't see why. Yeah, so Rob, I can't pin your comment, but I'll say it. How does God fit into a world with so much science and logic? Let's try it now. It's not letting me pin it for some reason, Rob. I guess the forces are going against us in that way. And that's fine. So let's define a few things first. Let's define God for the majority. Then I'll give you my version, my definition of God. Then let's define logic and science according to the majority. And I'll give you my definition of both, okay? Great question. So, God and science, are they the same? In order to understand this answer, we have to understand what the definition is and whether or not those definitions can even be applied to science in a scientific way. God is normally described by most people as an entity, some form that exists in physical reality that is observable through our waking life, i.e., we're having an earth life system and we observe with senses. Most people see God as that, yet God is perceived as this omnipresent, omnipotent being who in some way brings us salvation if we adhere to certain rules and indoctrinations. That's most people's belief of God. My belief of God is that it can't be defined or labeled. It is the eternal, manifold expression of life that is expanding constantly, expressing itself in the form of creation and renovation. This infinite intelligence is the giver and gift of our consciousness, and it is consciousness. This is my belief of God. And I also believe that its source, its origin, if there ever was one, even though it's a misnomer to call the infinite something that has a beginning, middle, and end. Its source is the imagination. And we as human beings have this gift of the imagination for the creation of things. Science is one of those creations. Logic is also one of those creations, in that we are using a form of law, a recognized law of patterns, for the definition of phenomena things that we see, things that we observe. We build items and tools in order to observe closer with more detail. However, still at the end of the day, we are observing through the lens of consciousness that has been given to us by what I consider to be God, a superior, infinite intelligence that knows the means and the way to all creation. It's the giver of it, and it is the gift itself. So how does it fit in? The question is, God in that way does not fit in so much as it expresses itself through all things, while also creating them to understand its purpose, which, if there ever was a purpose of God, it is know thyself, which is the same as saying, know yourself as that. You are the infinite presence, you are the infinite intelligence, you are the expression of life passing through your body. You are the observer and watcher of all these things before you as they serve as the result, the effect of your wishes through the imagination. So that's how it all fits in. Okay. So Jake, thank you for following. Spirit Sesh, thanks for following. Light Owl agrees. Rob asks, and it's not coming through and I likely shouldn't approve it, but I'll read it to you anyway for the sake of discussion. Understand this question is posed with a why, and we will go into the discussion of the purpose of why and how it is man-made. What I mean by that is, we ask the question why when we are unsatisfied or saying no to a situation in life that is occurring in the now that we wish to either escape or fight, but we don't have the ability to be with it enough. Therefore, we question its existence. Rob asks, and this is a very logical question to ask in this light, why does he give children bone cancer? Okay. So the question is, why is this infinite intelligence giving disease? And we must then turn to a situation in my life that I believe will help to answer this question thoroughly. Jamie C. asks, flat earth or a ball globe? This will also help to answer that question in the same light. Jamie, just hang in there and don't go anywhere. Tune in, okay? It's whatever you think. Nirvana Mama says imagination is the very process through which creation happens, which is truth. So, I'll give you a personal story. This is a story that I choose not to revisit often, unless it is for teaching purposes only. This is one of those moments. In 2011, I had an experience with a woman who I was dating who was pregnant with our child. Our child was gestated to about six and a half months and was considered viable at that point. Conditions occurred, which I will not go into in further detail, that led to what was called preeclampsia, which meant that the mother of my daughter had to give birth or place herself at very significant risk of a fatal hemorrhage of the brain or blood clot. And so I learned all of this on the fly as we came to the hospital, rushing there. And when I arrived at the hospital, it all seemed somewhat surreal to me because I thought all along that I had my daughter on the way and that we were preparing her room, had all the items for her, welcoming into this world. And it was no less than 24 hours from that moment in time when I thought everything was perfect to where I saw her be born, exhale, die, and hear the flat line of her pulse, asystolic, while I watched life all around me in the hospital come to its place of fruition and beauty and celebration. And I'll tell you, since you asked, why does God give children cancer? I asked this question as well, not in the same way, But I said, why would God ever take such a beautiful soul from me when all I've been in my mind is good, caring, generous, loving, and otherwise helpful to people? Why would God do this to me? And I asked it in the form of anger, frustration. I asked it to my brother over the phone, my eyes pouring tears. I asked it in the form of saying, I will never do this again. I will never attempt to have children. It's too painful. I'll never go through it. Rob, it's all good. You know, it's all good. I'm giving you this answer so that you understand that the answer came to me from the woman who bore this child, because she was holding her lifeless in her hands with joy. Not that we lost her, but because she was feeling that she gave birth and feeling the endorphins, and I saw in her eyes just, she was celebrating life as best as she could. Amongst the loss, she tried to find some way to be all right with it. And when I asked her why, just as you asked me, she said, you know, we're chosen to go through these life experiences because we're able to endure them. Anyone else wouldn't be able to. It serves a purpose so that later on you can explain that it wasn't so much why, but that it was a result of our life experiences converging in a way to where you had to experience them. And this was one of those experiences. And to clarify this further, because that's a lot of story, Rob, you know, the truth of the matter is, any sort of disease, cancer, or illness is a result of erroneous thought by those who are bringing the life into this world, or erroneous thoughts accumulated over the course of multiple lifetimes through our genetics. Whatever it is, it converges into a manifestation that is often, in these cases, devastating, inexplicable, and infuriatingly bad. And it tries to make us scream at it like it's the worst thing in the world, which is really the truth. It feels like it's the worst thing in the world. But the truth of the matter is, if you were to say to me as an egoic self, what caused the death of my daughter? I could say, I'm fully responsible. I am. Whatever my decisions I made in my life, whatever the decisions of my ancestors made, whatever brought me to that convergence, it's my responsibility. It was a manifestation that I observed. Therefore, it was something that was planted as a seed in the mind of God in some way. It was provided as a result of my thoughts. And so because of this, I started to understand that I could apply this to every trauma in my life. And I went all the way back to day one when I had a part of the people aren't going to like to hear this, but you know, boys in the 70s and 80s in the United States, about 75 to 80% of them are being circumcised, which is a form of genital mutilation. Usually happens on day one. You have a part of your genitals chopped off. And it's considered normal, and it's considered, you know, just what boys have to go through. And so in any case, you know, the first sort of intimate encounters that I had with women much later on in my life, I mean, well beyond age 18, I was a late bloomer. But the moment I felt a woman touch even my stomach, my body physically jumped, like with fear. So I had that embedded into the cells of my body. That pain that occurred had registered itself. So then the question can be posed, why did that happen? And who is the cause of that? Is it my parents? Is it the doctor? Is it society? Is it the ritual itself? And the answer is no. All of it is the result of something that was necessary to unfold for my life experience. I take full responsibility for it, but at the same time, I know it also doesn't define me in truth. It's a life experience. It's not me. And I think Coming to that understanding gives us the ability to create a newfound world around it, to understand it's a gift like anything else. These hardships, there are silver linings in them. So, Mountain Mama, thanks for following. Jamie Earp, you too. Chip Greist, thank you. So Rob, I'm really grateful that you asked that question. You know, I'll tell you, Light Owl says, oh, and Matthew has been through the same. The Light Owl says, God bless you. My son was born 7 months and I have him here. Made me really appreciate him. See? It's like one door closes, another one opens. This is a way of balancing energy. Nirvana Mama says, thank you for sharing your wisdom. Light Owl says, thank you for sharing your story. That was brave. Thank you. It's thanks to Rob. And I want to conclude that story by saying, we ask why when we are in the body, the pain body, so deeply, and we're also saying no to the situation at hand. Why is an expression of no in the now. And so if we can get to this truth in being, through our presence, through our observation of aliveness, we can use the question why as it arises as a means to heal, as a means to not question it further, but instead say to ourselves, the answer is not as important as I observe I am alive. Alive as pure spirit, always have been, always will be, birthless, deathless, changeless, and immortal. And that moves me. That moves me more than any story, or any hardship, or any illusory belief that I am a victim of this beautiful life. Thank you for sharing, the Light Owl. CSM fan, it's great to see you always. Sam says, thank you for being so strong and promoting it. You're most welcome, Sam. We got a friend following us, squeaking away. It's quite magical in the woods today. I brought a special stone with me. I'll show it to you. Yo-Yo Loco. Thank you for following. Hello, Nirvana Mama. Look at this stone. This is a fossil. And it's orange and green. And I want you to feel its purpose on your screen is for you to see your accounts in strength, wisdom, and abundance ticking up, ticking upward. Thank you. I found this one in an alluvial deposit right nearby. It's a nice little fossil, agatized. There's a better word for an agatized fossil. I'm just forgetting what its term is. It might come to me. Main Squeeze says, what is that thingy? A rock? It's pretty. It is. This is an agatized fossil of some sort. Looks like tendrils from some plant. Perhaps root systems that were... Ooh, we've got yips from a coyote. We've got a scout. Over that way, we had great horned owls, and now we have coyote scouts. And just in case you don't believe me, check this out. That's the scout print. On the lookout for food. I love this. Addicted to Science says it's the lion. I don't know if that is... I've seen the Canadian lynx only once in these woods. It was very mystical, and its paws are huge. Huge pause. So Rob, thank you. You know, we ask why when it comes to the active pain body. And so what I suggest is, whenever you can identify that there is one of those why situations or a no situation, it is a prompt, in truth, to merely observe, to take it in without definition or having to seek identifying it in any way or labeling it, and to just be with it. And then, if it's way too much, you can always step through the narrow gates in your mind to the imagination. And you can see in your mind, as I do often, my beautiful daughter, or the child, whomever comes to mind, as perfectly healed, but beyond that, never having any sickness to begin with. You see the child running, playing, joyful. Whatever scenarios make you happy, seeing the child in perfect health. And when I tell you I've had lucid dreams of my daughter, I have. In a shining emerald dress, walking up to me, asking me to make her some pizza, which I do, in my mind, because it's just as real, if not more, than the pains that I felt. It's so much better for me and for her. You see, when we come into this human life, it's not just this iteration of us. I believe that at the same time we are living out a total of 8 personas of ourself that carry in a daily cycle. And it's hard for people to believe this, but it's a higher dimensional way of seeing yourself in a multiverse, in a multi-dimensional world. The real 8-fold path is an 8-form personality shift, where it goes on a shift of 3 hours in a day. We don't have access to that other person because they're in their entire different construct, but we, as spirit, pass through these iterations. It's hard for me to explain to you. I explain it in the form of dimensions. I'll read this. CSM fan says, I'm glad she's with you. She is. She's alive and well. The White Owl says, in green tiara, indeed. Emerald green. Matthew says, cool. Now you understand what the fox says. Once you tame me, you're responsible for me. Caden, good to see you again, says, pain is purpose. Suffering is only a part of the ego. That's right. There is no good or bad, but thinking it makes it so. And Sam, yes, it is petrified wood that is agatized. I am in Connecticut, Nirvana. Yes, I see her right now, actually, Light Owl. And she's smiling. Nirvana says, by bringing awareness to your pain, you transform it into spiritual growth and healing. And what I'm about to tell you is that extra kick that allows it to unwind from the pain body. User 3729973978988. Thanks for following. Caden says, I watched Ready Player One. I want to hear about this, Caden. Ricky Spanish 1600. Thanks for following. As we come into the identification that pain is active, that's about as far as we need to go with story. From there, my suggestion is to step through the narrow gates into your imagination and see yourself as wish fulfilled, living from the end in that state of perfection. This practice is otherwise referred to as meditation. It also could be considered prayer. For true prayer is seeing yourself with the wish fulfilled, as if it's already done. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. heaven, your head, your heart, all these HEAs, they have to do with the kingdom within you, on earth as it is in heaven. So first we must realize the wish-fulfilled state of being within. And once we do that and feel it in the heart, which is our magnetic element of the body, it's about 5,000 times more magnetic than the brain, we start to literally attract and pull in, or better yet, scientifically, we can discuss this, we are reducing matter from a unified field that is in what's called superposition. Therefore, it's not expressed yet in form until we think it. So we are paying attention. And so when we pay attention, we are literally paying currency in the form of adenosine triphosphate. We pay this currency into the imagination, and from there we impress the subconscious. And depending on what we see and feel the most, with the most conviction, that comes into our life as priority. It collapses from a unified field. It's called orchestrated objective reduction, ORC-OR. There are microtubules that are within your cellular structures in the nuclei, and this is believed to be the entrance point for all that collapses from the unified field atomically comes into being. It happens through tiny microtubules in your cellular structures, and it happens at a rate that is so unbelievably fast, coming and going, collapsing and returning, that we witness it as solid, and we feel it as solid. But the truth of the matter is, it's coming and going. We are constantly flickering in and out of existence in renewal at a rate that's so fast that it's perceived and felt as solid. And so we have this reality that is described now as holographic. It's a holographic experience because it's constantly coming and going through a medium that is two-dimensional. It's wild, but it's true. We are projecting our reality through a two-dimensional medium that exists in a layering form through proteins and our DNA. Our DNA is beautiful because it can store holographic information. It can also send and receive subatomic information. And it can also process this information and store it. So it's a storage device, it's a processing device, and it's a transfer mechanism of information. Z, John A., thank you for following. Jesus says, hello, so long, it's nice to see you again. Indeed it is. Bliss Pathway says, yes, electrons in the field, collect. Indeed. Everyone, please imagine these free electrons entering your body. That is no joke. For your imagination is a higher faculty. It's a higher dimensional faculty. This is what we're getting into now in our discussion. Your imagination is the highest form of creation that you can have as a human being. And everything that you see before you, as much as it's fun to work with and play with, it is the result of your imagination. Angels 2000, thanks for following. We're going to step in the snow some more. Bliss Pathway, thank you for following. We got Snow Crunchness. Everyone likes the Snow Crunchness. Caden says, focusing on the energy between you rather than the object or person you're looking at. That is a great way to come into presence. There's Overhoff is back. Living in your miracle. Indeed. Grand Rising, says Pro Master. Tippy says, do you do tapping still? That used to relax me so much. I do sometimes, but rarely. I did just this other week for a few minutes on the live. I didn't bring the pencil with me, though. Thank you for asking, Tippy. That was awesome. There is a video that's pinned in my profile where you can hear that. Mike Prieto is here. Grand Risings, indeed. Ricky Spanish, I got you. Livy followed. User 7284950376392 followed. Light Owl said that was an interesting story. Truck followed. And you're welcome, the Light Owl. Amber says, can you talk more on the 8 versions of yourself? Yes, of course. We'll get into it now. Bites Mightily 916, thanks for following. John says, thank you for being here. Angel Therapist followed. Great to see all these beautiful people coming in. Amber asks, can you talk more about the 8 versions of ourselves? Absolutely. In order to talk about this in a way that would be beneficial to most people, including scientists, to where it would be palatable, we have to talk about dimensions. So let's begin with the basics. The universal subconscious mind, or the unified field, or consciousness itself in general, or God, or the provider of all things, the all, you could consider in this example as a point, okay? Because a point is everything. At the same time, it hasn't expanded itself outward. It hasn't become anything else in form. Therefore, it's technically nothing. So a point is really everything and nothing until it is observed as something else. Okay? So we start there in our dimensional discourse. All right. Source. It is a point. It is everything and nothing, and it only becomes something else until it is observed as that. Okay. What is that? Well, the next dimension to the point in this example would be a line. So let's talk about the composition of a line. Think of it like the stick. You have your top point, you have your bottom point, and you have all of the points in between, even the one that creates this little eye, that's a vesica Pisces. All of these points are infinite in their own state, yet they're part of the line. So each and every point is everything and nothing, yet it's something because we're observing it as something more than a point, okay? So you're following me thus far. We have a line. It's the next dimensional expression. This is creation. Indeed, Livy, we're looking at it, therefore it is being created. Truck says, thank you for what you do for God and everything for the nations. Thank you, Jesus. Indeed, Jesus is our salvation, which we will talk about as well. Has to do with the unfolding of this dimensional discussion, in which we will talk about the eightfold life, the eightfold path, and the 8 iterations of our being. Okay? So we have a line. What happens when we want to evolve from the line? Well, we can have 3 lines and we can form into a triangle, or we can have 4 lines and we can form into a square. The reason why the triangle is important is because it is the foundation for our 3-dimensional world. It allows there to have a formation of a tetrahedron, polygonal, fractal design is how everything is perceived in this 3-dimensional world, and it's very important to note that. But in this example, we're going to take this a step further, and we're going to talk about how the line becomes a square. So it's the next of the dimensional shifts. John A. says, you have such a beautiful calmness to your teaching. I love it. Thank you. Thank you for this, John. Very kind of you to say this. I am you followed. David Reed shared. David, it's great to see you again. Willpower followed. I love that name. Mani followed. All right, we're caught up. So we talked about a point being everything and nothing. We talked about points in a line being everything and nothing, but a dimensional shift. It's dimensional growth. And now we're going to take 4 of these lines and we're going to join them at perfect right angles that fall in line with the numbers 3, 6, and 9, which Nikola Tesla talked a lot about. And we're going to create the next dimensional shift on 2 dimensions. It is the square. What's beautiful about the square is it requires 4 lines, but once you join them at perfect angles, you can have a system in it that allows there to be frequency. So frequency is a result of it fitting within the square. We have boundaries and we have reverberation. Therefore, we can have cycling of frequency that occurs coming back and forth. It becomes a measurable world within a square, okay? It's a higher dimension than the line because you can't really measure it. You have a beginning and an end. I suppose you can measure the length, but you can't have both height and length until you have that square giving you a construct, and that's the addition that you get with that dimensional shift. But it's not enough for us to live in a three-dimensional world. We need something else. We need depth. We're going to talk about that now. Bridget, thank you for following. FU crew, thanks for following. Reiki love, nice. Light Owl says this makes so much sense. I love that it's making sense. It gets deeper. We're going to go deeper. Sony Murphy, thanks for following. And for those who are just joining us now and you're wondering, how can I catch up on this discourse? I put every single live recording on my YouTube page, which is, the link is in my bio. You'll see a Suno link for music, and then you'll see a YouTube link called Sacred Imagination. That'll take you there. And you'll catch these discourses live. You might even hear your mention there. So, in any case, we are now at that place where we're talking about 2D construct. And there was a question about vortex math. I'm not familiar with this. You can tell me what vortex math is, John A. And if that loses you because I don't know, just understand that's your ego. All right, here we go. So, what happened when one square was suddenly thinking one day, and this is a story, so let me entertain you. And the square says, I love how we have reverberation, we have frequency, we have this back and forth, but I want something more. I want it to be more profound than just length and width. I want depth. I want this to be at a distance from me. I want to perceive that distance. And so what happened was this square, in its infinite intelligence through the imagination, could imagine this concept, but had difficulty explaining it to other squares because they weren't thinking outside the box. Until one day came, there was a coherence, an amalgamation of 6 squares. And they said to themselves, you know what, we're just going to join our points just like we did as lines, just as we did as points to begin with. We're going to join all of our points together with equal distance and equal space. And we're going to layer ourselves until it forms into this thing that we all keep seeing. We see it in our minds. And then, of course, they had 5 that came together, and it was just about there. And there was the last one that was on the fence, the last square, said, I don't want to be there. I don't want to do this because I see what's happening now. And if I join you, then we're going to close this circuit, and I'll never be able to see the world as I see it again. It'll be completely based on faith alone that we join. So the other squares are like, well, we're already together, and we already see what's here, and we know the possibility, but we need to close this circuit. And if you close this circuit, you'll be the one that we all remember as the one who closed it. You'll be like the one who closed the lid to the Jack in the Box. That last square likes it. It's got a big ego, so it decides it's going to drop down onto the top of that square, closes the circuit, and now the square starts turning all around. In all these different ways, it becomes a cube, 3-dimensional. And within that center of the cube, just slightly off, formulates one point of infinite source spiraling through in what is considered God's manifold expression, the golden mean. Now starts to show itself in depth. Okay. Sam, thank you for the invite. Forever, or thank you for following. Forever, I should say. Yes, 916. Does this deal with the Fibonacci sequence? What a beautiful question you asked in synchronicity. Yes, the Fibonacci sequence and the golden mean directly related to one another in the formation of depth through the cube, the 3-dimensional version of the square. Think about how this happens, folks. Incrementations of 2 iteration. And now we're just about to get to the 8-fold path. We're almost there. You've been patient with me. You've been listening to the snow crunching. We're getting to somewhere now. We're seeing this. We're using our imagination. We're using our minds. 1 point as infinite creation leads to a line, which is 2 points with everything in between being the infinite expression, leads to 4 lines. Joining into a square leads to 6 squares. Leading to the formation of a cube leads to, come on, someone give me the answer. 8 cubes forming the fourth dimensional tesseract, the 4D version of the cube. Sarah asks, do you do ASMR anymore or just walks now? So far, I've just been walking in the woods. But, Sarah, that does not mean you can't get hours and hours and hours of footage on my YouTube. But some would argue that this crunchy snow sound, along with my voice the way it is right now, brings just as many tingles as my tapping of the screen with a black wing pencil. But that's up to you to decide. Jenny Lynn, thanks for following. Pot Love Me says, an angel in the snow. I've missed you. Thank you, Pot Love Me. God bless you. And you know, Sarah, I appreciate you asking because it's like, in a way, a compliment. Thank you. It shows love. Addicted to Science says, that's incorrect. It's not 8 cubes. John A. says, yes, the tesseract. Well, the bottom line is this, everybody. We cannot see the truth of the tesseract in its entirety through this 3-dimensional space. Just as the square cannot see the cube until it unifies in perfection to form the cube, just as the 4 lines cannot see the formation of a square without its unification with 4 others. What I'm noticing is there's an incrementation of 2 in every dimensional shift, 2 additional constructs. So if it were 6 squares for the cube, it is 8 cubes for the tesseract, moving in a unified fashion, joined in a unified way, in a way that cannot be perceived through the 3 dimensions. So what happens that is consistent between all of these dimensional shifts? Comes the next question. Well, are the points running from each other? In a way they are when they form the line, but they're also unifying. Are the lines running from each other? In a way, some points are, and others are unified. But the bottom line is, there's a unification of the circuit as a wholeness, as a oneness for each and every one of these structures that cannot be avoided. So as much as we may perceive separation in our 3-dimensional world, there is also the unification of consciousness that is required in order for us to perceive 4D living, the next dimensional shift of human consciousness. So the question came to me, I was thinking, how could I convince someone like Addicted to Science to believe that we need to unify when we're constantly questioning things? We have attachments, we have these desires. And the answer is, it's not our responsibility to join in unified consciousness as egoic selves. It is our personal responsibility to surrender our identity as we see it in the waking life, to source itself, to organize and join all of the pieces that we wouldn't know how to organize and join anyway, for us to experience our elevation in consciousness in 4D. How do we do this? There's only one way, and it's the imagination. Music is the best way, says Vibing. This is a beautiful comment. You can look at Rudolf Steiner's research on music, spoke about music as a 4th dimensional element of life. So there are a few ways to touch into 4D. The imagination, music, meditation, which is dreaming while awake, and prayer, which is utilizing faith, believing something to be real before it exposes itself or it collapses itself into reality in our physical world. So my personal belief on the 8 versions of ourselves, try to put this together. For me to have this reality, there must be duality. So there has to be a polar opposite of myself in order for me to exist. I took that into consideration. Just as a cube has to have a square on top and a square on the bottom, Square on the left, square on the right. You know where I'm going with this, right? Square in depth, background and foreground. We have to have 8 versions that are in polarity, in perfection, at the same time for us to exist. So while there is a perfect, rich version of myself, there's an impoverished, suffering version of myself. While there is a awakened self, there is a self that is totally asleep and unconscious. It's this type of thing. So how could I, in any possible way, convince these iterations of myself that they are to unify, understanding that it would give me total control over manifestation through thought? How could I get everyone on board if I already know myself from my past as being so ignorant, so closed off to the idea of unification of consciousness with Christ, which is an infinite intelligence that knows the means and the way to give me total wish fulfillment? And the answer is, you must surrender your current self entirely to the source that feeds you life by becoming a watcher of your aliveness rather than a participant in the game, which is to say, you become a point in the center of an 8-spoked wheel. You become the center source of all the iterations of yourself, including the one you are living in. And by surrendering to that through the imagination, by simply imagining your ideal self, however you like, you are allowing the proper organization and unification of the pieces that you would never even understand how to connect, how to link. You're allowing that process to occur without resistance. This is why the imagination is gifted to us, and this is how we shift to what I believe to be the 108. You hear 108 a lot? 108 malas. There are the 8 iterations of self and the one unifying principle that is the source of all of it. What it gives you is 9 in total. As no people are saying that 8 is the favorite. 8 is infinity on its side. It's the hourglass on its side. Once you turn an hourglass on its side, there's no movement of time. Everything stands still. It's a very powerful number, very powerful concept. Janetta, thank you for following. The Father says a 16-bit. My favorite numbers are 7 and 42, Addicted to Science says. Through my eyes followed. Is that the 7 degrees of separation? Yes, 916 asks. Solfeggio tones, Brother John says. 432 hertz. Most of the all of the solfeggio tones, if you were to take the 3 numbers and add them together, will give you either 3, 6, or 9. These fall into the corners of the square. Everything falls into the unified fashion of 3, 6, and 9. Nikola Tesla would argue that 8 is also an important number, which I've discussed with you, has to do with the 4th dimension tesseract. Brother John says everything breaks down to waves, vibrational frequency. Jojo USA asks, how do you use music? I see, that's why you mentioned 432 hertz. 432 hertz is a more unifying frequency than 440 hertz, which is a dissonant frequency, which all commercial music is recorded in order to cause distortions with your cell structure. It's all overcome with the imagination. Every single thing outside of you is overcome with the imagination. So just go into a place where you believe to be harmonious. I'm serious with this. It's that simple. It's as simple as it was for the square to become the cube, to just surrender to the idea that they're going to unify. It's really that. And you surrendered to unification, in unification, by saying, I observe I am alive more than participating in this life experience as a victim or as an identity or collection of life experiences. That's really it. Addicted to Science says something beautiful. So many things coming in. Yeah, 916 says, I wonder if the golden ratio helps the creation of depth for our consciousness. That's a beautiful consideration. See, all of you are expanding. Like, these are wild I'm seeing what you're saying. And it's wild for me to perceive. Johnny88, thanks for following. So Addicted to Science says the cube is the shadow of the tesseract. That's a beautiful concept. I love that idea. I love that idea. Because we're not seeing its entirety. We're just seeing the shadow of it. Just like the square is not seeing the cube in its entirety. It's just seeing the shadow of it. Just like the line isn't seeing the square, but it's seeing the shadow of it. It requires a dimensional increase. And here's what's beautiful about all this. Audio is the chef's kiss. Indeed it is. Music. All right, we're caught up, I think. Lots of stuff coming in, lots of talk. Good ways. Jeff Larkin, thanks for following. Vibing says, imagine you wrote the story before you came here. It's true. This is something that deserves a pin. @sign, thanks for following. The Saya, thank you for sharing. Whole Woman Manifesting says, could you please discuss 8 and the octagon? Yes. Livy says, I was told it was 3, 6, 9, and 12. Well, 12 is, if you reduce numerologically, it's 1 plus 2 gives you 3, so the cycle continues. That also applies. Dee Dee, One Love, thanks for following. Sierra Daniel, thank you for following. Gigi, thanks for following. Light Owl says, synchronicities will be happening more and more. We are shifting. The Father, thank you for following. Whitley, thank you for following. I got it right there. Photons experience no time. Indeed, they don't. Robert Miller, phonons especially are quasi-particulate. Robert Miller, thank you for following. Mountain Mama says, I've been seeing 999 repeatedly. You're experiencing packet loss. It's a joke. That's a nerdy joke. But that's great that you're seeing it. It means it's synchronistic. Octopi are some of the most amazing creatures. Okay, here we go. Do you see my questions about Kundalini, John A. asks? I got to catch up. We can talk about Kundalini rising, but we have this question coming in. And we'll tie it into Kundalini rising, okay? All right. Deep discussions today, real deep dive. All right. So I had said before, for us to understand the eightfold path, the 8-spoked wheel, the 108, and the tesseract as a fourth dimensional construct that is the evolution of the cube, three-dimensional life, we have to understand that the incrementations of expression increase by 2 with every dimensional shift. So the example is you need to have 4 lines for a square, 4 squares, you need to have 4 lines for a square, 6 squares for a cube, and 8 cubes for a tesseract. What goes beyond the tesseract? It's something fractal that I can't really explain to you. Let's just focus on the 4D right now. It's enough to take in for a given day. But I believe the 5D has to do with a star, a 5-pointed star, where the head of the star is pointed north or upward, heavenward. But in this case, think of it like, look up the tesseract and animation. This would be the best way to start. And then Salvador Dali's Hypercubus. Let's start there with some imagery. You're going to see cubes, not just in the form of a cross, but cubes going in a 3-dimensional way. So if I were to turn, you would see more cubes in this form. Look up Salvador Dali's Hypercubus. Very important to look at it this way, because you're going to see the unfolding of the tesseract in 3 dimensions. Dali somehow figured it out a long time ago. And so he has the depiction of Christ crucified on this hypercubus. So one of my book covers actually uses it because I was so moved by it. But what you will see are a total of 8 cubes representing different renditions of self. These renditions of self, I believe, have their own individualized constructs. So a cube gives you your own construct, your own black box, as it were. And I do believe that we cycle energetically through them. But I am having an isolated, localized experience in one of these bodies. Whereas there are 7 other iterations of myself also having those experiences. All of it is powered by Source, an infinite intelligence that knows the means and the way. And I do believe we can have shifts in and out of these realities, depending on what we think about, shifts us through them. It's hard for me to explain to you. Also, if one experiences death, my understanding is it's not the end of the rest of them. I have had moments like this where I've had near-death experiences where I definitely should have died, without a question. And I didn't. And I do believe that consciousness is there to basically transport us to another form of being in that moment of death, that our consciousness cannot die, and so thus must continue to express itself in physical form until we are all decided that we're going to start over again. Every version of yourself decides it's going to start over again. Then there is an incarnation into a new body, a new ego, and a new wheel, and all of that starts again. This is my only way to try to describe to you the Eightfold Path in this strange way through the Tesseract. It would be impossible for us to see 8 iterations flowing at the same time unless they were unified. And if they were unified, perhaps there would be a little delay. Have you ever looked at the depictions of Hindu deities? You'll see layers of them, just about unified, multiple arms, carrying different objects and idols. Seems rather fractal, seems kind of trippy, seems multidimensional. Yet this has been depicted for thousands of years. What I believe is when you come into oneness in being, in truth, by surrendering yourself to Source, it pulls all the other iterations, all the other versions of yourself into this one point of creation. Now, I'm using imagination right now. I have no proof of this, but I am trying to give you a visualization of what I've seen when I've looked at the depictions of Hindu deities. They look like they're going through matrix bullet time movements, multiple arms, multiple legs, multiple versions. Yet they're very close and in sequence, moving. And so it's wild, but I think of the first time and the only time that I ever experienced dimethyltryptamine in a large dose through ayahuasca. The experience that I had initially was one of complete and total peace and a detachment from all of my pains. And that was for about an hour, where I felt that it was all just meaningless. Every single thing that I had ever held on to, all of my attachments, all of my pains, became totally irrelevant. They were there. I appreciated them, but there was no sense in harping on them. And it was around that time that I started looking around the forest where I was, because I was in a pine forest. And I could see the fractal designs, the polygonal fractal designs of each and every skin that I see on these trees. I could see the wire framework of it all. And I could see how they were cooperating. They were bending and growing to accommodate all of each other. Each species giving itself enough room to have light in that form of communication. And then I found myself awakening from the earth. And I was really nervous because what I saw was the shaman, totally reptilian, 100%, speaking in tongues that I couldn't understand. That was wild. But after all that happened, and I was freaking out, which is wild itself, I realized that I wasn't going to come to in consciousness in return unless I surrendered to it. And so I took all of that fractal craziness, the whole experience, and I put it on the back burner, and I said to the people around me, however strange and distorted they looked, please take my hand. And I took their hands, and I held them, and I said, I love you all, no matter what happens. I am willing to let go of everything that I've ever had, come to this conclusion that I may never return, and I want you to know I love you all. And then it was like that started to come to, and it was in that moment that I looked at my skin, and there's a reason for me telling you this. I looked at my skin and I saw the firing and wiring of highways of energy, electric, lightning blue, blue as anything I've ever seen in my life, glowing neon. I saw it looking at my hands, my resting truth, my being underneath the skin was totally blue as Krishna, 100%. And then it ended, and when I went to bed that night, I had the most powerful lucid dream. I was there with my wife at the time. Our children were sleeping in the room, and I saw before me this beautiful, beautiful God of being, floating in the air, green, bright, hands flowing, lots of hands flowing, just looking at me. And its eyes, very sharp Vesica Pisces, pronounced, and one that was facing downward from the third eye, also a Vesica Pisces form. I tapped my wife at the time and I said, do you see this? And she looks up, she goes, oh my God, what is that? Oh my God. And then poof, it was gone. But she saw it. It was right there in the room. Right there in the room. She saw it with her own eyes, right with me. We witnessed it together. And that was my experience, basically coming to an end. But I saw the truth of the energy within my body as electric blue, unified with God, unified with presence. That was it. Addictive Science says, Neo-God. What do you think of shadow people? Well, Buck Hunt, I saw one in this experience that I mentioned with ayahuasca. Snicks, thanks for following. Bliss Pathway says, blue, indeed. It was, and we'll talk about blue too. I'm going to give you some theories about that, why it would be blue. Oh, Rosie, thank you for following. We're going trippy today, folks, in case you're wondering. Summer Rain, thanks for following. Bliss Pathway, thanks for sharing. 519-7418, thanks for following. Tiffany Cuck, thanks for following. A cube contains no 2D objects. We'll talk about that too if I don't forget. Jesse, thanks for following. Lazul, thank you. Yeah, says I love Salvador Dali. We're caught up. It's great. It's okay, Addicted. It's good to be sarcastic. Just play and have fun. Lori with love, thanks for following. Bliss Pathway says you turned off the ability to gift. I did. But if you would like to support me, please follow my YouTube. The link is in my bio. Michaela, thank you for following. Or you can purchase a product like Kava, which is consciousness expanding, anything that I'm promoting in my profile, you could purchase a product. I believe in all the things that I promote, so it'll benefit both of us. I'll get a commission. It's no requirement, but if you'd like to support me, that's a great way. Starpod, thank you for following. Buckhunt says, one shadow person came to me. Janetta said, you explained that so beautifully. Thank you, Janetta. Morgan is here. Nice to see you, Morgan says, wow. Neon God. That was, you're welcome, This Pathway. Thanks for asking. It was a wild experience. And the reason why I'm telling you all this is because I made a few conclusions from that experience with large doses of DMT, which I believe, and we're producing DMT naturally with the pineal gland, but it just gets absorbed and reuptaked so quickly by the bloodstream in the body that it gives us enough to have this beautiful earth life experience, but it doesn't go beyond that into other dimensions. I do believe when you have a large amount of evolved, concentrated DMT being released by the pineal gland, it starts to awaken these higher dimensional experiences. And you start to see the framework of what is around you, which is just information, coming and going of information, and in massive amounts in incredible ways. However, I did see the truth of my being as distinctly blue. I mean, blue as you could possibly imagine, and firing electricity, just tons of electricity. So, who knows what that means? The fact that I saw the shaman as reptilian, speaking other tongues, kind, wasn't at all dark or ominous, just seemed like he wanted to help, like he was being helpful. I had a helpful experience. It was a wild experience. And then there was another man next to me from Sweden, and he was just Caucasian. I saw nothing else. He was enjoying his trip, as it were. 5197-418 says, listening to Ram Dass now. I believe the answers lie in the Hindu realm. Must reach naturally. There's a lot of wisdom to be found. There's an Overhoff asks, astral travel, can you please elaborate on the subject? It's when you use the imagination that is actually astral travel. We will talk about it. Crystal Switzer, thanks for following. Shadow people, the infamous Hat Man. I saw a shadow person behind me when I was experiencing large amounts of DMT. I felt the presence of something behind me. It was scary. And then I took some, what's called vibhuti. In Hindi, vibhuti is a sacred ash. And I made a circle around myself. And I imagined myself as protected. And the entity went away. That was part of my experience. Once again, you got to understand, folks, I'm talking about my ego self having a life experience with an altered state of consciousness in which I'm recording information for later recall. And the things that I discovered were that this world is the coming and going of information on display. It is fractal by design, which means it is likely being caused by some crystalline structure. So I have belief that we are actually a universe in a crystal that's likely diamond, or if there could be something harder than diamond, it is that. Whatever can't be broken, have inclusions caused, and we are growing within it. It's a wild concept, but there is research about us being in a universe in a crystal, and the reason why I say that is not just because I think it's cool, but because of this fractal design, it would apply perfectly through God's manifold expression, layer after layer. In addition, if we were in a crystal, having a conscious experience, growing in that way, then it would allow... Sorry, I just have to get warm. It would allow the transference of phonons, which is a quasi-particulate form of communicating between two places at once. So look into phonons. It's the sound version, effectively, or the carrying principle, that which carries the ripple that is caused by the droplet of water in a calm lake. The effect that carries the ripple is a result of phonons. You can't bottle it, you can't identify it, but it is there. It does exist. Bliss Pathway says spelled phonons. That is correct. Phonons. No Spiritual Surrender says, thank you for giving me permission to hang out in my imagination as much as I genuinely want to. It is your kingdom of heaven, and I am glad to know that you have welcomed yourself into your own kingdom. Blessings. Heather, thank you for following. Astral travel. Okay. Yes, these are phonons, and phonons travel through crystalline structures. And when I say travel, they can be in two places at once, which allows there to be the instantaneous transmittance of subatomic information without the passage through time and space. And what that does is it allows us to have a brilliant experience in this waking life while at the same time have complete and total control over what manifests through our thoughts. So it's not just, I love the idea that we live as a universe in a crystal and we are having an earth life experience forming within it in some way as an inclusion, as it were, but that it actually has practical applications when it comes to subatomic phenomena and the reduction of information from a unified field into what we perceive as a conscious experience. It all has application. It also is behooving to note the pineal gland is filled with, or it's covered in calcite crystals, which, if they undergo physical stress, mechanical stress, leads to the generation of a charge. Just like this stone, by putting mechanical stress on both points, leads to the creation of a charge, the release of electrons into my body, and the transference of phonons as well. Warms my hand, which is nice. But the idea of us being within a crystalline structure, the universe itself, the multiverse as itself, is a wonderful theory because it allows us to conclude a lot of hypotheses about our existence and consciousness itself. It's likely we are forming within a crystal. We are in a crystalline everything. Well, every cell in the body is crystalline, as a matter of fact. And this was discovered by Bruce Lipton. He realized that there was very little difference between our cell membrane and actual processors of a computer, that they function in the same way of sending and receiving information, but that they're also silicon in a lot of ways. Our body is made of collagen and silica. A lot of it is, this stone was asked, this is a greenish orange fossil, agatized fossil. And I found it in an alluvial deposit whilst walking one day. Did I get you, Heather? Thank you for following Astral Travel. We will get into this. I know we got a lot of great questions coming in, and I want to field them all. So in case you've missed any part of this discussion, it will be on YouTube either tonight or tomorrow, and the link is in my bio. Nicole, thank you for following. Thanks for asking about the stone, Corb. Okay, let's discuss astral travel. Willpower asks, what do you think of aluminum in deodorant? Avoid it at all costs, Willpower. Get yourself some sodium bicarbonate or baking soda and blend it with, you can blend it with a number of carrier oils, maybe some jojoba oil and some therapeutic essential oils that are pleasant, the way that you want to blend with your own musk, as it were. So you could maybe add some rosemary, some sandalwood, maybe some lavender. And that's what I would use for underarm deodorant. Otherwise, you are introducing a number of toxins, depending on the product, to your underarm, right where your lymph nodes are. And your lymph nodes are the highway passageway for your immune system cells that are about to be developed in your thymus, which is your high heart. It's right here. Most of your immune system cells are formed in the thymus, and they travel from your lymph nodes. And one of the big lymph node areas is underneath your arms. It's kind of sinister in a way that would be what's placed in the products that most of us use. But you'll find that's a consistent factor in most of the things we consume as at least Americans. You're welcome, Willpower. Christy, glycolic acid under the arms every day. Glycolic acid does the same thing. Cool, that's great, Christy. I imagine this has to do with maybe glycogen and thermogenesis. The burning of calories is probably has to do with the mitochondria functioning well. RSD, GGFG, thanks for following. Jamie C says, I sleep with an electric heated blanket. Is that bad? 65 degrees is the proper temperature for sleep at night. Anything above that might have an effect on your immune system. Anything below that will likely lead to the formation of brown adipose tissue, which will create further thermogenesis and burn more calories. But it might be uncomfortable. User 2222510353461 followed. Thank you. Astral travel. 65 degree Fahrenheit. I know. I know. Deodorant pills available too, says 5197418. All of you people are so full of knowledge. Knowledge and wisdom. I got excited for a while. I should bring down my voice. Okay. I get excited when we talk about these incredible theories and things about the universe in a crystal, orchestrated objective reduction, subatomic phenomena, phonons, DNA as a storage device for holographic information, and the transportation instantaneously of subatomic info from one strand of DNA to the next. I get excited about these things. And then I get excited about talking about how we're an amalgamation of 50 trillion cells, and within each one of those cells are 100 trillion atoms. And how we came from one of those cells after competing against 250 million other sperm to make it to the cosmic egg. And we did. And we became human. It's pretty awesome. We're pretty freaking cool. Nico, thanks for following. Starpod asks, are you a scientist? I suppose I kind of am now. I'm just a super nerdy dude. I'm a nerdy dad. It is up followed. Terry Tanaka, thanks for following. I would call myself a scientist now, at least through experimentation on myself. I've become a scientist, like a wild scientist. I've done a lot of experiments on myself so that you don't have to. You just reap the benefit. Astral travel. Here's how it works, okay? Think of astral travel as traveling through the stars. But in this case, we want to be like guild navigators in the Dune series. We want to be able to calculate exactly how we can travel from one place now to some place that's on the other side of the known universe without colliding into any stars or planets, which requires a lot of precision. Fortunately, through astral travel, it requires 100% the use of the imagination. And as we use the imagination, we effectively unify ourselves with an infinite intelligence that knows the means and the way to transport us directly to that wish-fulfilled state of being. That being the centered of our goodness, our highest self. So astral travel, in effect, is utilizing the imagination to literally imagine yourself going out of body into a state where you are wish fulfilled. Ideally, if you're doing it to think of yourself as in a situation of peril, not the best use of astral travel. Highly suggested against that. We bliss together, thank you for following. Robert Miller says, from personal experiences, astral travel is no theory, referred to as theory. It's really not an imagination, Angels 2000 says. So let me clarify. The definition of imagination to me is Christ consciousness. So it is everything. It is consciousness itself is the imagination, because it has no boundaries, has no limitations, no restrictions, can be accessed instantaneously at any moment in time, and it's a higher dimensional faculty which has a direct impact on what we perceive as real in this waking life. So for all intents and purposes, when I refer to the imagination, I am referring to God. And since we are given the gift of the imagination to go to it at any time without any restriction or label that would otherwise restrict us or keep us from it, the fact that we have full-blown access to the imagination states that we are also God in that way. Once we unify with the imagination, we have unified with the Christ consciousness within, and we have become God, not begotten by man, one in being with the Creator of all things. Storms in the West, thank you for following. Random, thank you for following. Angel says it's a formal transportation of the subconscious. Indeed, we are literally transporting ourselves when we use the imagination in its entirety, when we are embracing it by surrendering to it, by being in it fully as a wish-fulfilled self. We are, in effect, transporting every cell in our body. Every cell believes that it has now gone on vacation. The issue is, most of us, we utilize the imagination not for transporting ourselves astrally for a vacation of the body, from the body, but we use it instead for the creation of time. We use it unconsciously to create situations of life that have to do with what's already happened, the past, or what is yet to occur and likely will never occur, i.e., the future. That's the issue. Because by using the imagination for the creation of time, we are detaching ourselves from the wish-fulfilled state of being. The kingdom of heaven is put on hold, and the source itself that is the kingdom then becomes used for the formulation of something that has either already occurred or yet to occur and likely never will. The result of this is the cells of our body, not knowing the difference between what we imagine and see, believes themselves to be projected into a past situation that cannot be rectified, thus experiencing pain and suffering. It embeds itself, it builds with coherence over time, and forms itself into something that we refer to as our identity, the ego. And this is an accumulation of pain experiences that forms into a body that the cells feel and believe to be real until we give it a vacation from it permanently. The only way we can do this is through the imagination. Rockin' Robin, thanks for sharing. Mr. Kelly J, thanks for following. I believe this is Rumi reincarnation, Ciscana Lingua. Something's happening to this broken down piece of meat, I can tell you that much. Heather, what about dreaming of things that actually happen? The future, mostly tragic events. Well, we're discussing this now, Heather. It's a good question. Corpification asks, what's an exercise to tap more into imagination as an adult lacking imagination? This is a interesting way to define yourself, Corb. Let's do it right now, okay? And Heather will get into your question too about dreaming things that happen in the future. Close your eyes if you would like to practice this. This is how to activate your imagination instantly. I want you to try, if you can, and you may not be able to, but I want you to try to see a cake before you. If you can see a cake before you, I want you to add lit candles as if it's your birthday. Inhale and say to yourself, I'm breathing in your mind as you inhale. Blow out the candles. Open your eyes, look at your hand and observe it on your side. Close your eyes and try to imagine keeping your hand right there, that you can feel the presence of your hand and its location. Imagine the cake before you again. Breathe in through the nose, blow out the candles. Now try to imagine where your feet are, at the same time that you imagine where your hands are. Come into the body. Open your eyes, perceive it as rendered. Now close your eyes and imagine feeling it, present. Birthday cake before you, inhale. Blow out the candles. Imagine where your hand is, imagine where your head is, imagine where your body is. It starts to expand your awareness of it. Open your eyes. See it all. Now say to yourself, I observe I am alive. I observe I am alive. I'm looking at a screen. I'm perceiving someone having a life experience in 3 dimensions through my screen. That's as far as the definition goes. The ego is going to say, great exercise, you did it, wonderful, back to story, back to you being limited, back to this thing that this person said to you, well, you've got more notifications, okay? It's going to be everything coming into you from the feed that has to do with time. And all I want you to do is to pretend like the sounds or the words that are coming in to your head from the ego are no different than if you were landing on an alien planet and an alien were somehow speaking to you in foreign tongues. It has no meaning to you whatsoever, other than mere entertainment. Excuse me. I'm going to grab a drink of water. A lot of talk today, in a great way. I love this. I love how much ground we're covering. Don't forget to hydrate, everybody, with fluoride-free water. Very important. You're welcome, Corpification, and we're going to conclude with this on the imagination. It's a building, so you've just picked up the instrument that originally was everything that you were before the identity came in and said that the imagination is just childlike. It's typical. It happens to most of us. In fact, all of us are told that, to let go of our wild imagination, you know? Robert says, major step towards astral traveling is to derive all the untrue beliefs in your belief system. So right here we have Robert having a unique experience, and it seems like it's a form of just observing. Once again, you're observing your aliveness. You're observing the labels, the things that we gave definition to. Jade, thanks for following. Let's see. So the idea here is you can now perceive your hands with your eyes closed, and that's imagination. So eyes closed, you shut off your perception through sight, but you can still feel your hand. That feeling, the localization of your hand through feeling, takes you into the present moment. Anytime that you're truly in the present moment, you are utilizing the imagination for your healing. It is a way of healing without knowing. Just as your body heals, if you have a cut, the cut is healing without you really knowing. It does it automatically. Just like it being a babe in the womb, we're growing and expanding without really knowing. And what happens is the more that we're not in story trying to control the healing process, the faster the process heals. That's why if we use the imagination, we are actively going into our kingdom of heaven. We are residing there. And whatever has happened in our identity as self, that I've explained in a number of ways today in quite abstract terms, whatever's embedded as pain in our cells, the cells have transported themselves along with us through the imagination to our vacation spot of wish fulfillment. Thus, they can heal as well and unwind the pains from our past memories, the pain experiences that we wish to be free of. And while that happens, the byproduct is the ego, the identity that we have built over our lifetime, experiences death, starts to fade. At the very least, no longer becomes this chief executive officer of our lives. Darian says, hands-on energy work helps. You can just, come in contact with your body. Come in contact with your body. Rest with your body and just be. Another way to experience presence, which is what we're talking about just exploring and enjoying God's manifold expression before you without definition. Another way to do it is to just listen. So I'm going to be silent for about a minute or two, which is pretty hard for me, considering my ego. It's a joke. But I am going to walk through the snow for a few minutes, and I just want you to try to hear the sound of silence between the noise. As strange as that sounds, concentrate on listening to the silence between sound. Do that now. Last thing I'll say, there's a coming and going of sound. That's it. There's a beginning of the sound of the step. There's a middle crunch to it. And then there's its conclusion. So just, instead of defining it, just be present with the sounds. Same with my voice. I smell rose incense. That's another way to come into presence. Pay attention to your smells, the sounds, and the location of your body, and its feeling, the aliveness of your body with your eyes closed, that you can feel and locate. Another way to come into presence is to monitor your breathing. You give your mind a job. Every time you inhale, say in your mind, I'm breathing in. Every time you exhale, say in your mind, I'm breathing out. And then you can always return to the birthday cake exercise. You breathe in, you imagine a birthday cake before you, and you blow out the candles. And if all of these things are too hard to do because there's so many distractions going on, you can come into your state as a watcher or an observer of the event. And if that's too much, you can do the practice of imagining yourself literally disappearing. So you become like spectator mode in a video game where you can float freely and observe all things without participating. That is another way. Psychologists would refer to that as disassociation. However, it is being done mindfully. You are removing yourself as a physical participant in order to unify yourself with the aliveness as a watcher of your aliveness. This is who you were before you were a name, before you were a collection of life experiences. You observed you were alive. And of course, you knew what was good or bad inherently, just like a dog knows. And a dog also knows when you're upset versus when you're happy. You don't have to communicate any words like that. Your intuition is that very fact. It's constantly present with you. Just as you can listen to the sound of my voice and not have any attachment to the meaning of the words, your brain seems to know how to give you the meaning so that you don't have to think about each and every word, which is what your ego would wish for you to do. You see, the reason why I say this is because since your ego self is a result of the creation of time, in order to label things and define things, the first element of your ego is your name. And of course, my name, William, is just a collection of frequencies forming into a line of sound from which I respond, because I have compiled a number of life experiences with the name William and this body to where it has become an entity of sorts. But the truth of the matter is, if I were not using the imagination to believe that this string of frequencies has meaning, and if I hadn't used my imagination to pile up my education, my life experiences, everything that I ever felt, all my memories, if I hadn't used the imagination to build up my identity in that way, then there would be no suffering. There simply would be no suffering. So the idea is we are unwinding the pain body that we have unnecessarily built up. Though some would argue, even myself at times, that it is a necessary process to build up the ego into a phantom-like identity that seems to know how to resolve things, tries to convince us that there's a solution to going into the past, that there's a solution to thinking about things in the future. And to the person who asked about dreams about the future, understand that any construction of time is a result of using the imagination to make it. And while that is being done, we are, in a way, neglecting our aliveness that would otherwise be connecting us with Source in a pure, truthful way, for the elimination of suffering until it goes away entirely. And what is replaced by that is an emptiness that is blissful contact with Source. It is a freedom beyond all freedoms that could ever be imagined. And it is our truth in existence before we were a name and a collection of life experiences. This is why, as much as babies are cute, people gravitate to them, because they are fully connected to Source. Each and every baby and child, before the identity has a chance to hold grip on their lives, is effectively a little guru in their own light and right. We're just trying to get back to that by having no meaning whatsoever other than what we decide is new and good and desirable to have in our experience. That's it. We are returning to being like a child before we were anything. Robert says, we don't think in words. We receive photos, feelings, slow them down to words, telepathy. Robert, you have your life experience and you're observing it. What's beautiful is that you're observing what you are defining as your life experience. The bottom line is you're no longer playing the role. You're observing God's manifold expressions. So whatever that is defined as, you now have connection to the truth that you are alive and you are observing. So whatever the definition is, isn't nearly as important or needed as the fact that you observe you're alive. That makes you one with Source. Randy says, I heal my injuries rapidly through my imagination. I can heal a burn in less than a minute. There you go. Just be sure that your ego isn't what's healing it. You know what I'm saying? I've fallen into that trap because it wants to be the one who's in ownership of all these beautiful miracles, as well as writing, music, running, performing marathons, paintings. Anything good that comes is coming from source in truth. Anything else that has to do with ownership has to do with the ego. And it's cunning in that way. It's very, very cunning. Bori, thanks for following. I think we caught up. Darian, yeah. Robert says, psychology class progresses. There are some students that start seeing themselves outside the body. That's presence, seeing yourself as alive rather than a collection of life experiences. Helen, thank you for following. I think we're caught up. Joy, thanks for following. Elvie says, amen, thank you. Fabian asks a question. Grateful greetings, everyone, says Madhuricast, welcome. Are fish conscious? I'll get to this now, if it will let me. Good. Corvification, you could just be joking, Fabian, I know that. You could be trolling, but it's a legit question for our discussion. Corvification, can you talk about how to achieve career goals and biz goals in a spiritual way? Absolutely, Corb. If I lose track in this, are fish conscious? I want you to just pose the question again so I can get to it. But we'll do, no, really, okay, awesome. We will do affirmations after this. Affirmations is the answer, along with prayer, which is a proper use of your imagination to see yourself living from the end with your wish fulfillment. But we'll do that momentarily. Okay, you're welcome. So, Fabian, and anyone else who's wondering, what is conscious? The question is answered as everything here that you see, anything that is perceivable as part of the physical reality that is your life experience is conscious. Now, I would say that there are levels to this consciousness. And before, someone had mentioned that most of the mysteries come from old ancient Vedic texts like the Bhagavad Gita. There's a lot of wisdom to be found. There's another book that I recommend you read, though it is very dense reading, I would say, and challenging. You have to read it several times. However, it is called God Speaks by Meher Baba. Meherbaba. And the book name is God Speaks. Okay? All right. So while you're checking out God Speaks by Meher Baba, Caden says, I once heard dogs and trees live in the 2D. Well, everything that we experience in 3D is being projected through 2D. You have to have a lower dimensional storage device for a higher dimensional expression. So in other words, in order for us to have a holographic experience, a holograph must be projected through a 2D flat surface. Everything that you are experiencing in this 3D realm, albeit very convincing in 3D, through your haptics, your body, through sensory experience, is a projection through holographic medium, managed by DNA and the formulation of your proteins. Please look into orchestrated objective reduction, microtubules, transmittance of holographic information from DNA strands. All of this is going to help with a better understanding of how this is entirely holographic and being projected through a 2D flat surface that is constantly collapsing in new forms, refreshing from a unified field. Have you ever read Be Here Now by Ram Dass? I have, and it's awesome. It was a big counterculture book at the time. Okay, so the idea is everything conscious? And the answer is yes. Mayor Baba explains it as every form from stardust to human has an evolution of consciousness within. And that there is a pinnacle of consciousness within realms of being. So there would be a pinnacle of consciousness within the atomic structure of things. There would be a pinnacle of evolution of consciousness within metals, rocks and stones, trees, life forms like crawling, creeping things, reptiles, and then human by Mayor Baba is described as the ultimate evolved form of consciousness before unification with Christ, or the unification with unity consciousness, the all. That humanity is right there at the pinnacle. And we are, as a result, given the gift of the imagination, which is in effect God, while also having a physical experience being made in the image and likeness of this intelligence. We are the perfect expression of consciousness before it is fully evolved and unified. So it's discussed in that book. So the answer is, in long form, yes, fish are conscious. They're also eukaryotic life forms. So the cells in their body come from the same kingdom that the cells in our body come from, as do these trees, they're eukaryotic, as do fungi, being the oldest of our ancestors in the eukaryotic kingdom, also have the same cellular structure. So that kind of explains, in a way, my thoughts on evolution. It's just evolution of consciousness, expressing itself through newfound feelings and desires. And we have direct access to the imagination, which makes us right there at the pinnacle of all of these beautiful expressions. And within our body, we have all of these highest forms of elements. So the most evolved version of stone would be diamond. I have theories on how that is forming in the pineal gland. Of course, that is more speculative than anything else. We do have traces of gold in the body. Gold is the highest form of metal, and it comes from the bursting of a star. We also have that in our body. So as far as metal's highest expression, it's gold. Stone's highest expression of consciousness is diamond. And life's highest form of expression of consciousness is human. Okay? All right. 50 says, science, not as a whole, believes that all animals are conscious and self-aware. So I think that awareness varies. And let's see. So let's talk about manifestation. Corpification wants to talk about how to achieve career goals, and especially business-related goals, in a spiritual way. So when we're talking about spirituality, we're talking about the breath. Spirit in Latin means, spiritus in Latin means breath. We have a tidal volume of 2,100 gallons of air coming and going in a given day in our body, through the body. And so we are, as they say, what we eat and what we consume the most is air. Comes and goes, just as food comes and goes, but not nearly at a rate as air does. So in order for us to achieve business goals in a spiritual way, we must exercise proper usage of our breathing through the nose, while also pairing this with the proper use of the word I am. I am is your manifestation tool that you use with your words. And It is unbelievably powerful. It is a programming language, and it programs the subconscious into perfect expression if you have it dialed in. So here's what I suggest for manifestation techniques using your words. Say to yourself, say in your mind, and this will be on the recording on YouTube so you can refer to it again. I have a large, steady, dependable income, consistent with integrity and mutual benefit. I look upon money as divine substance, forever circulating in my experience. I think of money as divine substance that is good, for it allows me to express myself in my truth in the fullest of ways. I am now writing into my subconscious mind the idea of perfect success and wish fulfillment. Love, which is the source of my supply, serving as the unified field, knows the means and the way to all of my wish fulfillment. All I need do is step through the narrow gates into the imagination and see myself as living from the end in my wish-fulfilled state of being, which I do now, for it moves me more than any illusion or undesirable life experience that may be trying to permeate its way into my life right now. Instead, I use the imagination as the source of my creation and unify myself in being with this source. And while I'm there, I speak the way I would as I am successful. I look the way I would as successful. I see money flowing into my accounts as I would as successful. And thus, the subconscious mind knows and believes it is real. For the subconscious is like the earth. It simply expresses the seeds that are planted in it. So long as the conditions are right, the seed is expressed. And I know, as I consciously access this state of being, I am expressing the blueprint of the perfect seed upon the subconscious mind of God for its realization. It is done. I am a success. I am wish fulfilled. I am divinely prospered. And I am grateful for the gift of these blessings through God's grace in the now. You can start there. Jim Magnola, thanks for following. Mother of the Wild Valley says, you got more snow, it's beautiful. I'm glad you enjoy it, and welcome back. Yes, we got some snow. So Corbification asks another great question. Is that a prayer or affirmation or both? Oz says, seems that considering what happens to air through your work would be a spiritual practice indeed. It's okay, Robert. You're doing great. Oh, that's beautiful, Caden Ryan. You're talking about the Vesica Pisces symbol. Take a look at the Vesica Pisces. A lot of wisdom to be found in that. Cambridge Declaration on Consciousness is 50-50. Lots of resources to look into. So, prayer, in truth, when used effectively, is an affirmation. And when we're talking about affirmations, we're affirming truth. We're making it whole. We're nailing it down. We're planting the seed. So a true prayer is unlike what most will do when they go to church or to whatever spiritual practice, location of prayer. What most individuals will do is they'll come in, take a seat, and start worrying if they weren't already. Please, God, pay my bills. I need someone to help me. I need something to happen. Please. I hope this happens. I'm praying for this every single day. Please send me a sign. This is what most people say in prayer. The issue with this is that it's not a complete prayer in the way that the person truly desires to see their wish fulfillment. So the subconscious knows no different between please help me and I am separate from something. I'll say this again. The subconscious knows no difference between please give me my salvation and I am separate from my salvation. The subconscious knows no difference between I hope this will happen and I am away from that thing. I am at a distance from that thing, and that is my desire because I keep hoping for it. So most prayer is done erroneously. It's done with worry, and it begets more of it. The idea here is for a proper prayer to take place, there must be affirmations. And the affirmation is, I am it. I have it. I'm experiencing it. I am enjoying it. I am living it. And I am observing it as real. All of these things are required in order for it to be a proper prayer, because if you see yourself at a distance from anything that you desire, whether it's success, money, wish fulfillment, love, health, protection, worthiness, comfort, ease, all of these things, if they are not felt first through the imagination as real, then they shall not be expressed. Only the feeling is expressed. And that feeling is paired with whatever thoughts come with it. And so when you use the I am affirmations, it is simply another way of using your power to impress the subconscious mind. So I means the infinite imagination, the infinite intelligence. These are all I's. This is the I of I am. The A is the active, choosing, selection from the menu of infinite items that is your wish fulfillment center. Think of it like Amazon. Instead of it just having products, it has your perfect love, perfect career, perfect success, all these things. That's the A. You're choosing actively from the menu. The M of I am, that is the maternal, receiving, matrix. Means the shoreless ocean that has no bounds. It is the earth. The matrix in Latin means the womb. It is the womb of creation that is impressed by the seeds planted by the A, the active masculine component. So every human being has their infinite I, that's source, that's the imagination. Every human being has discernment, which is making choices over what we like versus what we don't like. And every human being has the maternal or matrix as the receiving element, the divine feminine, which expresses any seed that is impressed upon it more than the rest. So this is how you use it. You say, I am divinely prospered. You go into your mind and you see the wealth pouring into your bank accounts. You're using the money to enrich your life and others. When you say, I am successful, it's not, I wonder if I'm going to get this job, or I hope I'm going to get this job. Those are tough to titmice. Having it out. It's not, I wonder if I'm going to have this job. I hope I'm going to have this job. I pray I'm going to have this love. I wish to have this love. It's, I am divinely loved. I am prospered, and I am living this in truth. You go in to the imagination with those words. You feel it in the body, the cells of the body through epigenetics. No difference between where you are thinking to be and where they believe to actually be. So they go there on vacation to the wish-fulfilled self. Continue doing this regularly through the imagination, and you are effectively doing prayer through meditation. Meditation is dreaming while conscious. That's all it is. You're going into the imagination, causing a dream to occur. You're literally transporting yourselves to that state of being, and you are receiving the benefit that is instantaneous, which is the feeling of wish fulfillment. So every time I walk on this trail, I am divinely prospered. You can make a game out of it so that what things were troublesome before suddenly become prompters that you are prospered and wish fulfilled. You could say every step I take, I gain $1,000 in my bank account, and you can imagine your bank account going up 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000. Maybe make it 10,000, 20,000, 30,000. Maybe make it 1 million, 2 million, 3 million. But you're seeing it go up, and you're using it for the enrichment of your life and others. So, being in a loving relationship, you want to have the perfect partner. Imagine being with the perfect partner. What are the things that you will say to each other? Where are the places that you go? You are there. What's the dinner that you want to go on? You are there. Let's say your significant other has never taken you out to that place that you would love to go to, but you don't have the courage to ask for it. Great. The way you ask is not by asking the person. You go there. When you go there, you have asked. It's the same as planting the seed that grows. So that's what you do for anything that you desire. The question comes in. The answer to this, begin again. So if you're praying for someone else, imagine they already have it. This is exactly correct. Perfect health, perfect prosperity, perfect wish fulfillment, whatever it is, protection, love, joy, all of those things. Yes. And in effect, what you are doing is you are creating coherence with that, and the infinite intelligence returns it to you in the form of a boomerang. So when you pray for someone else in the light of goodness in that way, you're actually doing it for yourself. And a lot of people sitting in a coffee shop laughing, that's where Matthew is right now. You are there. Corbification says, best and most clear explanation and instructions for manifestation ever. Thank you. You're so welcome, Corb. It was a great question coming from you. So glad to hear that. That's awesome. David, thanks for sharing. Dandil, thanks for following. Appreciate it. A being the first letter, indeed, Kate and Ryan. We are all infinite, masculine, and feminine components all together through the use of the I am. We are the I am. And you can't have any of those individual components without the whole three, without the Trinity. So you can't have any creation without the womb of creation. You also can't have any creation without the seed going into the womb. And you can't have any of that happen without an infinite intelligence that knows the means and the way to express it. So you have to have all three in order for there to be existence. All of us are that. We are all the I am more than anything else. This is the truth. Consciousness is the I am. This is why it was said by God at Mount Sinai when Moses asked, when I return to the Pharaoh and I'm asked, who is it that sent me? What's your name? And the answer is I am. I am that. I am. Which is to say, anything that follows the I am is what you are planting as a seed, and the I am that comes after that is the confirmation that it has been planted. That is why I am that I am is the name of God, because it is the infinite, the selection, the planting of the seed and its expression, the that becoming the object of desire, and the I, the active, and its expression coming back to you in a feedback loop from source. It's the full thing. That's why I am that I am is the name of God. It's God's manifold expression. It is the genesis of life. That is the G that you would see, perhaps you've seen all the time in the Masonic symbol. It means Genesis, the generation of life through an infinite principle that is constantly cycling. Yeah, so it's a big, big thing. The I am. She's bulletproof says, I struggle to stay focused when I don't see things changing. Yes, well, this is very honest. Thank you for the follow. The idea here is faith is the solution to this. And I'm not saying this in a religious way. What I'm saying is faith is the exercise of you seeing yourself as changed, not even changing, not even going through the process, but the final credit roll of your wish-fulfilled life unfolding before you, and you're experiencing it in your body as there. That is change. And so long as you go there, the work is done. You don't have to think about the path. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to know the way, the steps. Think of yourself just as cared for as you were when you were in the womb of your mother. You had an umbilical cord that came in, feeding you all the resources for you to expand incredibly. You didn't have to have a plan then. It's the same thing. By merely observing your wish-fulfilled state of being, you are entering into the womb of creation in truth, and you can rest, relax, and receive, knowing that everything is taking care of you, because that is the life principle. It's not the death principle. It's not the suffering principle. It's not the pain principle. It's the life principle. And all it does is give, all it does is repair, and all it does is renew. So by going into the imagination, you have connected in, you have plugged into the umbilical cord of creation and allowed yourself to be at ease rather than a victim of external circumstances of which we have no control. This is how you do it. Your salvation is in the surrender of all of these life situations to a higher power. That power is your imagination. It is the I of the I am. She's Bulletproof says, that's the best analogy I've heard. Thank you. You are so welcome. I'm so glad it resonates. Very happy. Sometimes William is able to allow this to come through without interference. Shannon, the Rock Mom, thanks for sharing and for coming back. So yeah, and she's bulletproof. We all have these, they're stories, they're life situations. We all have them as identities. And so really all that this is giving yourself the worth and the permission to exercise the imagination and to do it in secret. This is the other big thing. You never want to explain to anyone or anything outside of you the full details, the full-on details of your wish fulfillment until it manifests. At that point in time, you'll just be sharing it with people. You'll be showering people with abundance. This is why in Scripture it said, pray to your Father in secret, which means you're making the selections from your menu of life in private. Because the moment that you mention these things before they are real and manifest, it gives an opportunity for the past, which is embedded in a number of ways in the body through pain, to express distortions, because the subconscious honestly is going to test us to see if we really want these changes. So if you pray in secret without talking about it, it will not be messed with. It will not be interfered with. Not nearly as much as it could be. And that can be rather uncomfortable too. So I would never talk about my plans with anyone with so much detail that it could be sabotaged, not because the individual wants to do it, but because simply it is coming in with momentum. Doubt carries momentum in the body and in movement in our life. That's really the only reason why we should pray in secret until it is manifest. I'm glad it makes sense. You're most welcome. The other part of this is that the ego cannot see when you are stepping through the narrow gates into the imagination, because the ego actually feeds off of the imagination through the construct of time. You can't construct time and be present simultaneously. It's one or the other. We're either present and aware of it, or we are using the present to construct time. And when we are using the present to construct time, we are feeding the ego our aliveness for its sustenance. It works like a parasite in that way. So it will never see where we are when we're praying in secret. Thus, it will believe that you have detached from it. It will be fearful of that. It will be resentful of that. And it will come after you if you tell your stories, if you tell your secrets. Because it will see that it no longer has a purpose in your life. It will no longer have a means to exist. If you're seeing yourself as wish fulfilled, the ego has to see you as in pain in order for it to survive off of you. I pray that this makes sense. Shannon says, is that why I am shocked at the time on the clock when I come out of meditation? 100%. Lo, thank you for following. This is a beautiful question. And the answer is there. Handyman, thanks for following. Yes. Why it is so shocking is because when you are present, it's not that time flies when you're having fun. It's that time simply does not exist when you're in the imagination. It has no place. It has no existence. That is the exact truth. Caden says I would remove time from my phone if I could. What's beautiful about that comment is that our cell phones, unless we are live and present with each other, they exist entirely in time. Every message, every social media post is embedded in past. And every speculation about the future in a comment is a springboard from the past into the future, which also is a construct that we create erroneously. But we also do it because we fear death. And the creation of time is used so that we can take time to label things in order to perceive ourselves as safe from any external threats that may be a threat to our existence as an ego. Because the ego sees it as one life to live. Because for the ego, it is that truth. This will be the only time that we are ever this name and collection of life experiences in this unique way. But this does not mean that it is our one and only sojourn on this earth life system. In fact, it's just many times as you want to play it. And we talk about that in great detail in some of the other discourses. Well, everyone, that's going to do it for me today. It's been a beautiful discourse. You can expect to receive this on YouTube at some point this evening. I want to thank everyone who came in to follow today, to watch again, to retune in. They're always brilliant discussions. The questions that are asked are greatly challenging, and they put me to the test and allow me to just use presence to step out of the way and allow these words to flow. We've got our little friend here. Our beautiful little sparrow came over. They want some treats, so I'm going to take care of them now. Thank you, all of you, for being here. I'm glad that you learned things. I'm reading that. Blessings to all of you on this day. Take care of yourselves. You are worthy of wish fulfillment, okay? So are these little snowbirds. They're waiting for their treats, and they're turning their heads wondering when I'm going to give them their goodies. See this little snowbird hopping over? He's saying, I've been waiting for you, pal. I want some peanuts and some Cheerios, and I shall not disappoint. I love you all. Take care of yourselves. Go to that place of wish fulfillment as much as you can. And God bless you all on this day. You're all embodiments of God, and I see you as that, and I love you all. See you tomorrow.